Check, check, check. Hello, hello. Check, check, check.
They were gonna keep working on their A plan all the time. Like, oh, but it's not. Let's go all over again. It's just crazy. It's amazing how they get great. Yeah, it's like the Star Trek. Every other one sucks. Maybe I'll just download an app on my phone that I always have on me instead of having that thing.
This one's been used. It's 71,600.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to be starting in about 5 minutes, so if you could start taking your seats, we'll be back here shortly. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you can grab your coffee and come have a seat, and we love for folks to move forward if that's possible. So again, good morning and welcome. My name is Karen Kelly Torregrosa, and I am very excited to be serving in my second year as board chair for the Nonprofit Association of Oregon. On behalf of our board and staff, I welcome you to NAO's 5th annual meeting. We are truly a statewide organization, and this year we wanted to show that by holding our meeting here in beautiful Bend, Oregon. And it is quite beautiful. We couldn't ask for nicer weather today. So thank you, Bend. The meeting today is being streamed to our friends and members gathered at a viewing site at Mercy Corps in Portland. Welcome to those at Mercy Corps. Being hosted by our Vice President, Chris Crank. We can't see you, but hopefully you're waving. We also have people joining us from all over the state, watching from their computers. I understand we have nonprofit leaders joining us from Ashland, Medford, Eugene, Salem, and Cottage Grove. So welcome to all of you as well. So a very special thank you goes out to our sponsors for today's event. Our nonprofit leader sponsors, Kaiser Permanente and Bliss Sequoia. Our nonprofit ambassador sponsors, The Standard, Jones and Roth, and Ronald McDonald House of Central Oregon. And at the Friends level, James E. Richmond, CPA, PC. Their underwriting for this event allows us to bring this meeting to you and the information that we're excited to share with you today. So please join me in thanking our sponsors. We also want to thank our foundation supporters, through which we receive programmatic and operational grants. Their continued support underpins our work and allows us the opportunity to develop approaches in our programming to reach all areas of our beautiful state. So thank you also to our foundation sponsors. Join me. Their continued support and belief in our work makes the Nonprofit Association possible as a membership organization. So this morning's agenda will consist of a mission and service report from our Executive Director, Jim White, a governance report, an introduction of the board members that you just confirmed for our next program year, a working exercise on building our nonprofit voice, and a brief look ahead. After the meeting, we hope you're all planning to join us for the High Desert Nonprofit Leaders Conference. We have some great breakout sessions in store for you, as well as award-winning author, national speaker, and consultant, Peter Brinkerhoff, for our keynote address. He will be discussing with us smart stewardship for nonprofits. You don't want to miss it. I've heard wonderful things about him for those of you who haven't heard him speak. If you haven't registered yet, simply do so after the annual meeting in the lobby, or you can, for those watching us remotely or joining us remotely, you can register online and join right from your desktop anywhere in the state. NAO is in its 5th year as a statewide member organization serving nonprofits in Oregon. Some of you may remember us as TAX, a group of consultants working together since 1977 to provide support to the nonprofit sector. Out of that committed group of consultants, NAO was formed with its mission, as you see it here, strengthening and serving the nonprofit sectors so that Oregonians can thrive. It is NAO's intent for nonprofits to be stronger together. As you can see here with our vision. We can accomplish our mission and vision by understanding the leadership, capacity, business, and advocacy needs of the sector. And then coming together in our efforts through a network of members to protect and build a better future for our communities. It is through that nonprofit action that we continue to do our great work together. And now it is my pleasure to introduce NAO's Executive Director, Jim White. Jim will walk us through our accomplishments of the past year. Join me in welcoming Jim.
Thank you, Karen. I might need to make a little adjustment here. Sorry. There we go. Can everyone hear me? No? Okay, still not? Is that any better? Still? No? Okay, now? Project, I'm being told. Okay, maybe that's the issue. I'm just not projecting. Okay. I'm excited to be reporting out NAO's accomplishments over this past year and give you an idea of where we're going into the future. NAO is the statewide association for nonprofits, building on those 30-plus years of capacity building services that TAX founded in 1977. NAO is your state association, and as such, provides a very unique vehicle through which nonprofit action can be realized and understood. We are recognized by the National Council of Nonprofits and by independent sector as Oregon State Association, and we strive to be a convener, to be a capacity builder, to be a best practice promoter, to be a thought leader, and to be a voice of the nonprofit sector in Oregon. We represent and support all charitable nonprofits of all sizes, geographic locations, and missions throughout the state. We at NAO believe that nonprofits constitute the best traits of our democracy and the state of Oregon. Nonprofits keep our communities vibrant and healthy. They create and magnify public benefits. They catalyze opportunities to participate in civic affairs and enrich cultural life. Nonprofits push envelopes and stand up for the underrepresented in our society. They provide needed services, address inequities, and create innovative solutions to community issues. We should never overlook the fact that nonprofits generate significant economic impact as well. Nonprofit leaders are passionate and creative. I think as you look around the room, and those of you who are in the Mercy Corps building, look at each other, and those of you who are sitting at your desk, look at the people outside in your office. You can see some of the most creative talent that our society has to offer on some of the most pressing issues of our times. Nonprofit leaders excel at mobilizing Oregonians around those important missions. And in our increasingly diverse state, we need leaders that reflect our evolving demographics so that all community stakeholders are able to take part in our work and in our communities. Because we live in a more networked world in which collaboration is our context, leadership capabilities must be developed across all levels of an organization. Strategic planning is giving way to strategic decision-making, with culture, beliefs, and values playing an increasingly important role in the business of being a nonprofit. This time last year, NAO rolled out our theory of change for what NAO is trying to achieve in Oregon. Our theory of change includes the results which we intend to have in the service of our mission and provide a basis for accountability and continual learning and the evolution of vital programs and services that support the nonprofit sector. During the past year, we've used our theory of change to guide our work. We look for opportunities to galvanize the services we provide through program approaches that will serve but also challenge our sector. We believe that as your state association, we need to be both evocative and provocative. We believe that advocacy is an essential function of the nonprofit sector, and that complex issues require systemic change, including policy change. By working together in the public policy arena, nonprofits amplify their voice and increase their influence. NAO engages in sector-wide initiatives that strengthen the voice of Oregon nonprofits. We identify sector-wide issues and inform members and the broader audience of nonprofit leaders of threats and opportunities for greater engagement with the public sector and policymakers. This year, we continued to monitor federal fiscal policies and met with members of Oregon's congressional delegation, providing analysis of how various tax reforms would affect, both positively and negatively, nonprofits and charitable giving. We lobbied both Senators Wyden and Merkley for the passage of the America Gives More Act, which was passed by Congress but not passed by the Senate before they recessed. That act is meant to help secure important tax incentives for giving to nonprofits, the food donation tax deduction, an enhanced deduction for conservation easement donations, and the IRA charitable rollover. We're hoping that after the Senate reconvenes, that would still be able to be passed in a lame duck session. The federal government is continuing to work on its promise that nonprofits will be paid the true costs of performing work on behalf of government. We developed a set of frequently asked questions that we helped to work with the National Council of Nonprofits to have the Office of Management and Budget publish. This appears to have removed some of the ambiguity around these pass-through entities of using federal funds with a mandate that such entities would pay federally negotiated rates for indirect costs, or at least pay 10% rate to eligible nonprofits who are implementing that public sector work through their missions. Nonprofits with government grants should review those facts and adjust your practices if needed, and we're continuing to provide various trainings, webinars, and resource sheets so that those organizations who do get that kind of funding can make adjustments to their work and to the way that they're going to be able to receive those funding dollars through the federal and state government. We worked in partnership with the independent sector, grant makers of Oregon and Southwest Washington, the National Council of Nonprofits, Philanthropy Northwest, and our state association colleagues here in the Northwest to educate and inform the sector and policymakers about the kinds of issues that are affecting nonprofits both locally, statewide, regionally, and nationally, so that we might be able to connect up everything that the policymakers are thinking of that might affect nonprofits from the federal level right down to the communities that we're all looking to serve. We're going to have an exercise later that we're going to ask you to play a part to help us build our public policy agenda for this coming year. So we're ensured that we're amplifying your voice correctly. This past year, we continue to support initiatives that promote best practices and innovations in leadership excellence. Our consulting staff and associate consultants provided over 180 deep dive consultancies on strategic planning, board development, fundraising, and a host of other nonprofit specific training and consultancy issues. NAO's interim executive director and development director placement consultants and search services continue to be a critical asset to assist Oregon nonprofits as they transition leaders. These temporary placements of an executive director or a development director inside of an Oregon nonprofit allows that organization the breathing room to chart the right course for their organizational mission, sustainability, and the future. Our ETS team served in 21 placements as either executive director or development directors of our members. That's 21 different organizations that effectively NAO for a short time was helping to run so that they could continue to do their mission and be able to serve their constituents. We recognized as well that there's a need for competent financial management when senior level finance staff transition, and we just developed a partnership with CFO Selections to provide interim chief finance officer placement services for nonprofits in Oregon, and we look to see how that will build out into the future. Other examples of our work and leadership is our sponsor and support is our support of the Oregon Business Magazine's 100 Best Nonprofits to Work For project, which just celebrated the winning organizations last week. We support the 100 Best Nonprofits project because it gives nonprofit leaders an opportunity to hear back from their staff and volunteers and reflect on practices and culture as a nonprofit. In partnership with the City Club of Portland and Dialogues in Action, NAO had the opportunity to participate in Project Impact, an initiative to bring together a cohort of nonprofit leaders to help better define, capture, and articulate their impact, both externally and internally. And we're looking forward to be able to provide and be a part of that work into the future through those types of cohorts. Back in May, a collaborative of regional, state, and national level associations came together to bring Diana Aviv, the CEO of Independent Sector, to Oregon, with participants from across the state joining the Oregon Nonprofit Forum. The event was a great opportunity for nonprofit leaders and supporters to discuss the critical issues impacting our sector. Diana Aviv was amazed at the vibrancy of our sector here in Oregon, and NAO continues to support discussions at the Independent Sector Conference coming up in November in Seattle. I hope that some of you will have a chance to be able to participate in that in some way. We would love to see a strong Oregon contingent going to this national conference that's going to be held for the first time in the Northwest. So it would be a great opportunity to see our nonprofits represented strongly. In terms of growing capacity of nonprofits, NAO's team of on-staff and associated consultants and trainers delivered over 135 coaching and training and leadership development sessions across the state to more than 5,000 nonprofit leaders. These sessions are designed to develop leaders and help them maximize their organizational effectiveness and impact their community. Community leaders in rural parts of our state receive targeted training and facilitation and coaching through our partnership with the Ford Family Foundation. We know that partnerships with other organizations remain critical to any nonprofit success. This year, NAO united with the Rogue Valley Nonprofit Network to become a single entity supporting nonprofit professional development and networking in Southern Oregon. This new model includes an engaged and motivated local advisory committee in Southern Oregon, which provides input on the topics, training opportunities, and will make recommendations for limited scholarships for professional development. They're also spearheading a robust outreach campaign to support reduced season pass prices and introducing a one-year NAO membership for those organizations that they're going to help support. In April 2014, NAO introduced a new resource for Central Oregon nonprofits to support collaboration, communication, and provide limited on-the-ground technical assistance support and coaching for nonprofits here in Central Oregon. Adrian Graham of Leapfrog Training and Facilitation, and Adrian, if you could stand up. I know that folks who are viewing may not be able to see Adrian, if they can swing the cameras over to her. Adrian was contracted as NAO's part-time regional director to provide these services for nonprofits here in Central Oregon communities. This additional focus on Central Oregon was made possible through a commitment made by the Partnership to End Poverty just before they did their close down last year, and we greatly appreciate the leadership and thought that they put into being able to create that opportunity for Central Oregon nonprofits to continue to get support after the life of their organization. We're currently revitalizing our nonprofit network of Central Oregon with a regional advisory committee representing a mix of the region's community organizations across the nonprofit sector. This advisory committee, like the RVNN team, will also provide input on topics, training opportunities, and limited scholarships. One of the first projects of the NAO new Central Oregon regional effort is to provide an online resource directory of Central Oregon nonprofits. NAO is creating a directory by building on resources identified in the partnership's 2012 needs assessment and an online survey of local nonprofits conducted in 2014. In the coming months, NAO will create an online, interactive, and always growing resource directory so that nonprofits can easily locate and connect with community resources and professional services providers with a proven track record of working effectively with nonprofits. Think of sort of an Angie's List for Central Oregon nonprofits. Speak up, I'm getting, okay, sorry. An exciting new collaborative activity has been launched as part of this new regional endeavor. We've begun nonprofit resource roundups where Adrian has joined with the Oregon Community Foundation to meet with nonprofit representatives to share resources and funding-related tips. These gatherings also provide an opportunity for nonprofit organizational representatives to network with their peers from their own communities. The first roundup was a rousing success, with 29 participants attending the extended lunch hour program in Madras just a few weeks ago. We're building a partnership with Idealist, a nonprofit that seeks to connect the world's idealists with action. Organizations and individuals can connect with others through their virtual portals and on issues of common cause and concern. We continue to support the Young Nonprofit Professionals Network of Portland, a group of emerging leaders in our sector who engage and support in current and future members of nonprofits through professional development and networking opportunities. And of course, we continue to build and resource our nonprofit helpline and resources through phone, electronic, and in-person assistance and information sessions to Oregon nonprofits. These are just a few of the accomplishments of the statewide association in this past year. We know that the great work of nonprofits in Oregon is made possible because partnerships between nonprofits, foundations, business policymakers, and over 1 million people in Oregon who volunteer their time. We look for your partnership through becoming a member of NAO. Our membership continues to grow in diversity of organization, by subsector, geographic location, and in total numbers. There's some information that we have at both of the sites here on our membership and the breakdown of the kinds of the subsectors and the types of organizations and their geographic spread across the state. So if you want to get more information, that's both in your packet, and then we have some handouts. NAO now has 720 members. That's at the close of this past fiscal year as of September 30th. That's the highest number of members we've ever had. Finally, I want to just give you a breakdown of our financials. Our FY14 board approved a budget of $1.6 million that we adjusted slightly, and our preliminary projections for our year end will leave us just a bit on the positive side. The NAO board approved an FY15 budget, which began on October 1st, for just over $1.8 million. We continue to grow in our programming offerings. We're confident we'll be able to meet all our targets for our new budget year. We continue to refine our business model and look forward to proposing some new innovative projects for the next year and into the future. We had a good year here at NAO. We had a lot of hard work by the NAO staff, and I want to thank them for all the service, all the support, all the hard work. If the NAO staff in both locations would just stand up for a moment, I want to recognize them and thank them for their work. This is a dynamic team that works together to move the needle on the pressing trends that we're working on for all of you. I appreciate their engagement, their enthusiasm, and their creative thinking throughout this year as we continue to refine our services and our business model. So now I'd like to turn this over to Ross, who will talk about our board and our governance report. Thank you.
Let's see if we can get this right. Is that about the right volume? So my name is Ross Laybourne, and I am this past year secretary of NAO, and I have the responsibility today of reporting on this year's election process for our future board of directors for the coming year. The Nonprofit Association of Oregon's bylaws allow for a board of between 9 and 20 directors, of which the majority must be representatives of 501c3 charitable organizations that are current nonprofit members of NAO. To help lead our work effectively, we have engaged a diverse group of individuals to serve as members of our board, representing both the breadth and depth of the nonprofit community statewide. Over the last 2 years, we have added 8 new board members, each bringing specific skills, abilities, and experiences to the mix. We have greatly benefited from the influx of this new perspective and their many talents. This past year, we've been working hard to acclimate these new directors to an organization in transition. We are continuing our important work around NAO's theory of change, as you heard from Jim, and what it means for our organization and for our future. For those reasons, among others, the Board of Directors made the decision to not seek additional new board members for fiscal year 15. Normally, we would have opened the floor to nominations, and our governance committee would interview and make recommendations on a slate of candidates who would be approved by the membership. Because we did not seek new board members this time around, we asked the membership to vote on renewing the board term of our one current board member whose term was expiring. All 501c3 member organizations in good standing were eligible to vote for the NAO Board of Directors. On August 12th, the ballot survey was sent electronically to 540 voting members for the renewal of David Leslie, Executive Director of Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, for a second 2-year term. At the close of voting deadline on September 15th, 56 votes had been cast, with 54 members, or the minimum 10% of NAO membership, voting in favor of the slate. 1 voted against the slate, and 1 vote was declared ineligible. Directors of NAO may serve 1, 2, or 3-year terms with a maximum of 6 consecutive years of service. As of today, October 7th, there are 16 directors, 12 of which represent member organizations and 4 are members at large. I would now like to introduce the 2014/15 Board of Directors. Some of the directors are here with us in Bend, others at one or more remote locations, and so when I mention your name, I would ask you to stand and or otherwise identify yourself so the people in your immediate audience can put a face with the name. And with that, I will begin with the introduction of the board members who currently are serving as officers. You've already met Karen Kelly Torregroza. There's Karen. Karen is from Washington County, Executive Director of Vision Action Network. VAN's mission is to identify critical issues and support collaborative community-based solutions. Our current Vice President is Chris Crank from Portland. He's President and CEO of Albertina Kerr Center. Albertina Kerr partners with the community to support people with developmental disabilities and mental health challenges to lead self-determined lives and realize their full potential. Our current treasurer is Tonya Graham from Ashland. She is Executive Director of the GEOS Institute, which helps people predict, reduce, and prepare for climate change, bringing the best available science to community and natural resource planning processes. As previously mentioned, I am the current secretary. I am a member at large, having come to NAO, most recently serving as the attorney in charge for the Oregon Attorney General's Charitable Activities section. Our past president is Rick Nitty. Rick is from Portland. He's Executive Director of Neighborhood House, founded in 1905. Serves 12,000 low-income children, families, and seniors annually. Now to the rest of the members of the Board of Directors. First, our Public Policy Chair, who you will meet in a moment, Mark Langseth. Mark is President, Chief Executive Officer of I Have a Dream Foundation. The foundation helps low-income children succeed in school and college. Our current governance chair is Chris Otis from Portland. Chris is the Executive Director of Start Making a Reader Today, SMART. SMART is a volunteer-driven, statewide nonprofit providing one-on-one support for children pre-K through third grade, reading support. Eloise Damrush, Portland Executive Director of the Regional Arts and Culture Council that works to integrate arts and culture into all aspects of community life through grants to artists and art organizations, placing specific works of art in public spaces, and supporting arts education. David Leslie. David's Executive Director of Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon. EMO is a statewide association of religious denominations, congregations, ecumenical organizations, and interfaith partners with a mission to address the well-being of all Oregonians through faith-based social ministries, advocacy initiatives, and interreligious dialogue programs. Bob Lieberman, Grants Pass, Executive Director of Kairos, which provides residential and outpatient treatment to emotionally at-risk children and their families throughout most of Southern Oregon. Brandy Tuck. Brandy is Executive Director of Portland Homeless Family Solutions, which has 2 shelters for homeless family with children, both in downtown Portland. Claire Seguin, Springfield. Claire is Executive Director of Neighborhood Economic Development Corporation, NEDCO. NEDCO helps neighborhoods, and families build assets through home ownership, neighborhood revitalization, and business development in Lane County and Mid-Willamette Valley, serving Salem, Clackamas County, Marion County, and neighboring communities. Ian Lombard, Portland, at-large member. Ian is managing partner at Skyline Capital Venture Growth Investment Fund. Skyline Capital is a Portland-based venture growth investment fund focusing on apparel, footwear, and gear companies in the active lifestyle market. Michelle Neal from Portland. Michelle has over 15 years of experience in the public, private, and nonprofit sector in various managerial and professional positions. She is a former adjunct professor at Portland State University and Marylhurst University, focusing on topics such as communication, strategic planning, and diversity. Nancy Ramirez Arriaga from Portland. Nancy's an at-large member. She's a consultant providing coaching, training, and facilitation to nonprofit organizations. In addition, she serves as program director for Unitas for Oregon Leadership Project through the Latino Network. And last but not least, Jen Rusk, at-large member from here in Bend. Jen is the owner of Rusk Coaching and Consulting and has helped at least 35 Central Oregon nonprofits achieve great success in the areas of planning, organizational development, and fundraising. So that's all 16 members of your NAO Board of Directors for the coming year. And that completes the governance report, and now I will turn it over to Mark Langseth.
I don't normally like to stand behind a podium, but I thought I'd go easy on the video folks today rather than walk around. I'm getting a yes from Jim. Yeah, don't do that, Mark. I want to spend a few minutes talking with you about NAO's role in helping nonprofits successfully navigate the world of advocacy and engagement in public policy kinds of things. And I want to just start off by outlining 4 points. One is that nonprofits, from our perspective, have both a right and an obligation to be involved in advocacy and public policy. 2, there are some big changes coming. I'm told there's an event about a month from now called an election that generally will create some significant change, and I want to get into the details. A lot of transition this at the federal and state level. There's also a significant, set of challenges as it relates to tax revenues and tax-related issues as related to nonprofits, and I want to say something about what we did about that in Oregon. Third, if you don't already know, please know now that there are guaranteed protections in place for nonprofit organizations to express their voice and to be able to advocate and educate on issues that affect the people or affect the land, air, water, or animals that you work with. Fourth, and Jim will help us transition after I make a few brief remarks here, transition into an exercise where we want to try to get your feedback about where we focus our advocacy and public policy efforts as NAO in the next year. Just 2 other big headlines I want to cover. One is that nonprofits, I think, have an extremely powerful voice and an extremely important perspective to offer at the public policy table. We talk a lot on the NAO board about the fact that we've got a 3-legged stool, public, private, and nonprofits, that constitute the big sectors, right, in our society. And it's interesting because the nonprofit sector is one of the things that, if you go all the way back to this country's founding, was considered a unique aspect of who we were. And yet, if you think about it, how much goes into folks in the public sector advocating, educating, et cetera, for their respective agencies, initiatives, et cetera, and how much effort goes in from the private sector to advocate and educate, lobby, et cetera. And then you compare that to what we have done historically as a sector in terms of our advocacy, our education of policymakers. We've got a ways to go. And I would argue on the right and obligation side that we're in touch with some of the state's most difficult challenges. And yet, we, the collective we, aren't at the table nearly as strongly as those 2 other legs of the stool, and I think that makes the Oregon stool weaker. So again, I think from our perspective, it's a right and obligation that we need to exercise. Interestingly, last year, it was almost 2 years ago, at the last legislative session, we had a real threat here in Oregon. I don't know how many of you were aware of this, but a real threat to the charitable deduction. How many of you knew that there was a real threat? Okay, some of you. How many of you knew because of NAO? Yeah, a lot of you. Good. Well, that's important. We were the ones who led the charge to get on the phone with Speaker Kotek and some others to help explain that the charitable deduction was not a loophole, as Senator Wyden said, it's a lifeline, not a loophole. And as soon as people really understood, this could have been a $64 million reduction in charitable giving in Oregon. That's going to hit many of us, right? That's what NAO is doing. We're watching very closely at the federal level, at the state level, and helping educate. In this case, it was just one of those things where we had some policymakers that didn't quite understand what the impact on the sector was going to be and how important the charitable deduction is, not only for our sector, but for people who write the checks in a whole lot of ways. People give out of the goodness of their heart, but they also give because there's tax incentives, and they're both really important. Second thing I want to do, actually just say that NAO offers trainings and all kinds of things to help you sort through what's sort of legal and what's not legal in terms of an acceptable and not acceptable in the advocacy realm. But I would say advocating and educating on issues versus supporting particular candidates for political office is the gist of what we can do. And we can also get out the vote. And that leads to my second point, which is that in November, we actually have all 435 seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, 36 U.S. Senate seats, and 36 governorships up. Wow. Again, if we see ourselves as 1/3 of a three-legged sector stool, we ought to be engaged in getting out the vote at least to say the sector and folks who work in this sector are well represented at the ballot box. Simple as that. Oregon elections, we know I hope we all know, we've got a governor's race, we got one senator and all 5 of our U.S. representatives up for re-election. And in the Oregon State House, there are 60 district seats up. It's interesting, 38 are contended races, 22 of the 60 are uncontended, which I don't think is necessarily a good thing either. And again, I think our sector has a role in helping get out the vote and inspiring more confidence in the political system so we actually have candidates who want to run. Final thing I want to touch on is related to all of this is the Nonprofit Vote Project. Nonprofit Vote was founded in 2005 by a consortium of state nonprofit associations and national nonprofit networks, essentially to help nonprofits get out the vote, but mostly providing resources and trainings on how to do that in a nonpartisan, sort of acceptable way. There's materials in the back on Nonprofit Vote, and I'd really encourage you to pick those up. We've got a month here. There are some things you can do that are really easy and quick, so we're not expecting you to mount a huge campaign in the next month, but there are some things you can do to try to get out the vote and to be thinking about the next election cycle and what we might be able to do as a nonprofit sector to get out that vote. NAO, like I said, is going to continue to be very active in providing trainings and helping you figure out what you can and can't do in the advocacy space. But I would say, just in closing, the biggest misconception in the nonprofit sector is that we have to be hands-off when it comes to public policy issues. We absolutely do not and should not be hands-off when it comes to public policy issues. Again, we're the third leg of a very important three-legged stool. Our voice needs to be there in educating folks and in advocating for policies and issues, like I said, that affect the people that we know and are directly in contact with or with the issues that we're advocating for. I think that's it, and the good news is, whatever I missed, I'm calling Jim back up to the podium and he can cover. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, so I'm just going to hunch over because I was told that most of you couldn't even hear me when I was speaking, which may have been a good thing. So the next part of our annual meeting, what we'd like to do is ask you to do a little bit of work. You know how there's no free breakfast or free lunch? Well, what we'd like to do is if you turn in your annual meeting guide, which hopefully all of you got, it's at your table, just after the listing of our fabulous board and staff members, there is a voice of the sector discussion exercise. And what we'd like you to do at the two sites here in Bend and in Portland is we'd like to hear your ideas, your thoughts around some carefully selected and crafted questions that we'd like you to discuss at your table, and then we're going to ask for a little bit of a report out. And at each of your tables, we have a facilitator there, one of our either NAO staff or board. But if there isn't a person, I know nonprofit people, you're good at self-facilitation. So I don't have any fears that there won't be someone who takes the leadership reins at every table. And in this exercise, what we'd like you to do is address the questions in the sets that they appear, okay? So there are only 2 sets, but please do both of the questions in the set. Don't just pick one of the 5 different questions. Is that clear to everybody? So either pick set 1 or set 2. If you can get through all of them, that'd be great. But what we'd like is to bounce these. There's a reason that we've done it this way. And then we'd like to ask everybody to at least get to the final question, all right? So we're going to give you like a 5-minute warning so that we can move you on to that final question in case you're so involved in the other questions you didn't quite get there. And you're going to have about 25 minutes to do this, okay? So go ahead to it. Thank you.
having a lot of things. Generally on the national independent sector, so that's good. Like you say, it does get local. Anything else on about how you Right, so that's kind of quite on the second. think we did mention, for example, the tax charitable donation tax. I think Lindley
Testing, testing.
Okay, I'm going to break in on your conversation real quickly. We have about 5 more minutes, so if you could make sure you get to that final question now. 5 minutes. Thanks.
One, two.
Okay, I'm going to break in on your conversations if I could. If I could start bringing you back. Hello, we're going to start having you come back now. Hello. 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 Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We're gonna start having a few report outs. If we could get a few of the most salient points maybe from each of the tables, and we're also going to have the group at Mercy Corps go ahead and give us some of their points as well through an email survey system that Jennifer will help to report out on here. So do we have any groups that want to say a little bit about what they felt, what they saw, what they thought? Anybody? Can we get some report outs?
Yeah,
There we
so
go.
on this first question, we talked about how do you learn about issues? So NAO, you can't hear me. It's going to feed back though. We'll go with it. So NAO was the first thing we mentioned. The nonprofit quarterly was mentioned. National organizations, if you are a regional or local version of your national organization. And we also talked about the inbox challenge. So people were mentioning we receive a lot of emails, we get a lot of communication, and it's hard to manage that and prioritize that. So some of the things we discussed.
Great. Others? If you could identify yourself, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Emily Leach. Can you hear me? I guess to add to that, we would say that actually Brandy mentioned City Club as a great place to get some information. They've been doing some reporting on nonprofit sector issues lately. And then also Candy from Meyer Memorial Trust mentioned that they're doing tours of communities, listening sessions, basically to understand what issues are happening in certain communities around the state.
Great. Others?
Hi, I'm Alan from Heart of Oregon Corps. We talked about one of the ones we talked about was the second question, when does your organization feel compelled to act? And a couple of things came up were one of the issues earlier about the charitable contribution threat. From this standpoint, we talked about how our organization, well, all of our organizations, are often more compelled when it directly impacts us, so it catches our attention. And so also with that, with working with federal or state direct funding, when there's changes with that, that also gets our attention as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So back to the first question, there was a nice list that was more local here, but it's, I think, instructive maybe for what we might hear from other communities. So the source of information comes from Jen Russ. Thank you, Jen, who puts out a lot of notices and announcements, and that really, the pace of that upped when we were having the charitable reduction conversation in Salem a year or two ago, and that's when people began to hear from Jen more. There's a network of executive directors, which I think is associated with the Central Oregon Nonprofit Network, that is a source of information. Ben Chamber of Commerce puts out information, and there's a lot of kudos for you, Jim, for the constant, frequent notices you're putting out that disseminate awareness that then tends to ripple out in other directions.
Great, thank you. I have a little note here from some of the remote sites that have already reported in as well. They've done some of these questions. And one of the issues that one group brought up, or one individual sitting at a desk brought up, was wage and benefit for nonprofit employees, the struggle that nonprofits have around how we as a sector support wage and benefit issues for people who actually work for nonprofits. So there's a struggle there, as we know, between the funds that might come, especially if you have state or federal grants that don't have that money attached, even if you wanted to change your funding for minimum wage, parity issues, And we as a nonprofit sector probably need to really have some struggles and some discussions internally about how do we view things like raising the minimum wage and getting parity in our funding of our employees. Any others here? Any other tables want to report out? Here we go. We're just, any question that you might have, any of the questions that you did, if you could just go as you get them.
I'm Jim Lucier, and I'm a new member of this organization, but
Great.
I'm not new. Just
Great.
two things that resonated with me. One was collaboration, that there are many, many other organizations that deal with not-for-profit organizations besides NAO. The voice would be stronger if we collaborate on what that message is and its importance. Specifically in my area, I spent 40 years in healthcare. Most hospitals in Oregon are not-for-profit organizations. That's a tremendous collaboration opportunity. Secondly is the legitimacy of not-for-profits. What do we do for society? It's fundamentally important. We need to be really, really good at articulating that message and how we keep government smaller, how we provide for great and critical services to communities.
Great, thank you. Another report out from one of the remote sites, and then we'll go to this other table here, was, it sort of plays on that gentleman's last comments, was that both corporate and nonprofit, this individual was feeling, there are abuses of nonprofit rules that we all need to strengthen our own rules as a sector, our own principles, so that we as a sector don't fall into maybe some of the same traps that have happened to other parts of society where they're viewed in some ways as corrupt or not actually benefiting society in a positive way. So that was an important issue for this individual. Another one?
Graham, can you hear me? Okay. In talking about the final question, there is an issue around local governments establishing their own fees for things that normally would have been paid for by our taxes. It's called pilots, protecting or payment in lieu of taxes. So things like, road service fees, and then they're putting on these special little fees to be able to take care of, the maintenance of roads that they didn't used to do, and having that compete with the dollars that we might be going after. And also with things like foundations that are established for, say, our schools or fire departments, and that they're competing with us for dollars that used to be dollars just directed towards the social service sectors versus a sort of this government already funded organization that's doing that work, and now they've put together another foundation that's then competing for dollars.
Great. Another one? Oh, we have one over here, and then we'll come over here.
My name is Todd Kimball, and on the final question about what the NAO could do for advocacy, we talked about perhaps the importance of building a better network of advocates within the nonprofits in the state, because a lot of nonprofits maybe don't see it as appropriate, as was mentioned earlier, or as important. And as that contribution, the Oregon contribution issue kind of came up, it took a call from NAO to kind of get people to action. But the more advocates we can have out in the field, sharing stories about what's going on and being their own advocates, kind of raising those issues up to the NAO, that would help kind of get the word out from, I guess, from the grassroots up towards the top.
Great.
And we were talking about the final question as well, and it kind of ties in a little bit what Jim was saying, but NAO has the unique ability to raise awareness about the benefits of nonprofits, and as a whole sector, the number of nonprofit employees there are, what we're bringing to the economy, and all of those kinds of things that we, as one small nonprofit in one community, are not able to do. So bringing together the strength of all that everyone can do.
Great. And I want to make sure I point out as well, I appreciate that feedback, but also that we work regularly in concert with other subsector coalitions to understand what are affecting those particular coalitions or what are affecting the needs of particular types of nonprofits, and to help strengthen that coalition's position and voice. We've worked quite a bit with Coalition of Oregon Land Trust, with Human Services Coalition of Oregon and others to make sure that we're getting in sync with what all of they are doing for all of those particular subsectors as well, and to organize our joint message across the sector.
A couple things we talked about for the last question. One, our primary focus wasn't as much on specific issues, but on what Mark was talking about at the end of his comments about the role of nonprofits and advocacy in general. And it was more of an intersect between capacity building and advocacy. In other words, helping nonprofits understand the role that we can take in advocacy issues as a sector, or even as subsectors, through maybe training and capacity development to get that greater awareness out there. So we spent a little bit of time talking about that. One specific issue that we talked about, a lot of our conversation did focus on what the changes that are happening for nonprofits as a result of the health plan transformation, the early learning hubs that are being developed, and the Affordable Care Act. And that's impacting nonprofits in various ways. But one way that we can really look at that maybe would be sector-wide as opposed to subsector, and there'd be kind of a discussion to have there, is the social determinants of health are really critical in the health plan transformation and in the early learning cycle, early learning hubs, I mean, and the nonprofits are generally the organizations that are dealing with the social determinants of health. So there may be an upper level advocacy issue that we could look at NAO, and I think that would take more discussion to not get into a subsector level, but maybe there's intersection with subsectors we could be thinking about.
Great. Thanks, Bob.
A couple specific things that I thought were interesting to highlight that Laura from Heart of Oregon Corps talked about student debt and student loan debt and young people coming to work in the sector and helping ease some of the rules and restrictions around loan forgiveness to try to encourage more young people into the sector and help them be successful. I don't know if I got that quite right, but okay. And then another interesting one that was mentioned also had to do with understanding working with volunteers and volunteer compensation kinds of issues. And you probably could say this better, but do you want to add it? I have one more thing.
Just when is a benefit such as it started with the season ski passes for volunteers at Mount Bachelor? When does a benefit get to be called compensation by the state, and then suddenly the volunteer is not a volunteer?
Right. Great.
So helping people understand those kinds of issues. And then the other one that brought up, and I thought it would be a good excuse for you to maybe mention future work, had to do with long-term research around the impact of the sector.
Right.
And so I don't know if you want to mention some of the projects we're involved in, but I thought it might be helpful.
Sure. So I appreciate all those thoughts, and we at NAO are really interested in making sure that we regularly are reporting to all of you through sector surveys, which would be you giving us information that allows us to concentrate that information and get it back to you in a form that people can understand, do some analysis. And so we've committed with the 4 other state associations in the Northwest to launch a joint survey together, which will actually go out here shortly. It went, I'm being told. And we're going to be asking all of you to give us feedback so that we can give you some analysis on what the concerns and what the makeup of the sector is. We're going to do that biennially, okay? On the other off year, what we're working on, again with our other 4 state association colleagues, is to launch a 5-state economic impact study of the sector so that we can regularly understand and be able to talk to policymakers, to each other, to the private sector about the value of the nonprofit sector. And that's a project that's in its infancy right now. Some of our state association colleagues in Washington and Idaho and Alaska already do an economic impact study, but we feel that it would be great if we could get that data across all 5 states so that we can break it apart by state, but also that we can add it together and show the impact across the entire Northwest of what nonprofits do in our communities, the economic value of that. Any other final thoughts here?
Yeah, my name is Brandy, and so we had talked kind of what Bob was saying about we want to, NAO could really kind of teach all of these separate sectors about how to advocate for issues that are sector specific to their sectors, and really empower each of the sectors to go out and advocate for their issues instead of NAO trying to be the one to advocate for every issue that every sector faces. And some of the other thoughts that we came up with in terms of what's affecting nonprofits are the baby boomers are aging, not giving as much because they're trying to save for retirement, and then there aren't enough young leaders to replace the people who are retiring, that there's been a public disinvestment across all sectors, that there's a growing income divide, and there's a lot of equity and inclusion issues that we need to deal with here in Oregon.
Great, thank you, Brandy. That's great. So I think we've gotten some really good feedback today. I know that there's going to be some more information that comes in from those folks viewing us from around the state, and they're fortunately going to be able to write these in. What we're going to do is collate all this, and we're going to use this as part of building both our public policy agenda for the coming year, and then coordinating that, as I said, both with all of you, but also with these various subsector coalitions, and then talking with the elected officials around these are the types of interests and concerns that the nonprofit sector has. We'll also use, because some of these answers that you gave back wonderfully went beyond just advocacy issues. We'll also use this to continue to refine and think about the kinds of programs and services that we can provide and bring to all of you. So I appreciate all of that feedback, and I appreciate all of you being involved in this exercise. Thank you. So we're going to now turn, we only have a few minutes left, and we're going to go ahead and bring this annual meeting to a close. We very much appreciate the opportunity that all of you present by being a member of NAO, of bringing your thoughts, your good ideas, your joint collaborative work together through this network that is NAO. We are your state association. You elect our board, so therefore you are our governance structure, if you will. We believe that we have some really good but challenging work ahead in the coming year and years. We recognize that the nonprofit sector continues to be one that, with a constant need for funding, with a constant mission that just seems like it can never quite be filled up because there's so much need, there's so many important issues in our communities, that we're always sort of running on that treadmill. We recognize that we need times like this to get off the treadmill, reflect, think about what we're going to do as a sector, and then come back joined and together and productive. So we really appreciate the opportunity that you give to all of us at NAO to be able to be that amplifier of your voice, to be able to be that organization that helps to build your capacity and to help you in your leadership journey. So I want to thank all of you, our members, and all nonprofits for the amazing work that you do around our state. Thank you. So finally, I'd like to thank our sponsors again. We appreciate their generous sponsorship of this event. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to bring this to you. We also thank our foundation supporters who also generously support and underpin the operational and programmatic work that NAO does around the state and brings. And finally, I'd like to again thank our staff and board for the amazing work that they do as an organization, as individuals, in helping this organization do what we can do to support all of the nonprofits here in Oregon. I especially want to thank the group, a very tight team of people who brought this program off. I want to point out Jennifer in particular, Amy, Allie, who's over at the other site. So thank you all for this opportunity today to come together. We're going to close this, but the High Desert Conference, for all of you who are going to be able to remain here in Bend or who are connecting through the internet, the High Desert Conference will commence here at 10 o'clock. There is a schedule in your packet, and there is a map on the back page of your packet. Any of the sessions that are in the Cascade rooms, they're actually across the street over in the River Place Conference Center. So they're not physically in this part of the building. So this is Deschutes C and D, these two rooms. So if you're going to be in here for any of those sessions, this is where you'll be. But if you're in any of the Cascade sessions, you're actually across the street. And given it's such a beautiful day here in Bend, you'll have the opportunity to walk outside for a little bit. Betsy?
Just for anybody who doesn't know, this area, there's an underpass, so you don't have to cross the street. So you get that little bridge there that's a walkway.
Okay. So there's an underpass under the street, if you didn't hear that. There's a way to get across the street. And thanks again for the people in the people in Portland who connected, and the people who've connected through their laptops around the state. Thank you all. Bye. What's that? Well, they know where their thing is.